generation, wherever you are, whichever generation. So let's go to Joshua. Joshua, chapter 5. The chapter where Yeshua meets Yeshua. Y'all get that? We'll find out. Jesus meets Jesus. You know what I mean? The name for Jesus, Joshua, Yeshua is the same. Old Testament, New Testament, Hebrew. And what a great, great, great passage here. A new generation of empowered leaders. Joshua chapter, well, we'll begin in chapter 5, verse 1. I'm going to read that and we'll pick up with the rest of it. Verse 1, are you there? Good. And it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites, which were on the west side of Jordan, or Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, which were by the sea. And that's the Mediterranean Sea. So, Israel's not so wide, from Jordan to Mediterranean. And word went from the Jordan all the way to the Mediterranean. They heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the children of Israel until we were passed over. Their heart melted, neither was their spirit in them anymore because of the children of Israel. It was because of the Lord who was with the children of Israel. And our new focus is the power of one Lord, one surrendered life. Our focus verse, Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20. So it's on the screen, and we're going to get to know this verse all year long. Let's say it together. Now to him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. Oh, what an empowering verse. Especially, we dealt with that the first Sunday of this month in the context of Ephesians 3. When we surrender our lives to Jesus as Lord, it remains to be seen what He can accomplish in us and through us. So, have you ever arrived, perhaps you're there now, at a very defining moment in your life when you're made conscious of a decision, a need of a decision, to turn your back on the past and face a new direction, a different direction. Let me tell you something. Salvation is a new beginning in Christ. But I want you to know, even then, we always, God's people, need new beginnings in our lives. I know I have, and I know I do. And perhaps you're saved, but you're at a point where you're really ready, you're thirsty, need to turn your back on the past and move in a different direction. There are times in our lives when we're forced to face the reality of our need to let go of a painful past and move forward toward an unknown future. And now the past could be anything. The past could be a stage of life. It could be a series of bad decisions. It could be a period of time which was once positive and productive, but is now negative and counterproductive, really. And so it's sometimes difficult to venture by faith and develop new patterns, develop new associations in life. But to fail to move forward is just as difficult, if not more so. So do you fear stepping out by faith? You know what? You should fear not stepping out by faith. Because of the consequences are greater than those that you might face if it's in the Lord. Now, in Joshua chapter 5, we see the nation of Israel doing just that. I want you to look at this. You need to know your Bible, but here Israel is leaving a 40-year segment of their history behind, okay? As they cross the Jordan River. I mean, behind them. Well, what about that 40 years? It was a testimony of failure. You got some things in your past that you're not really proud of. Yes. I mean, a whole generation, think about this, of Israelites, which included grandparents, and dad, and moms, had died, and were buried in the wilderness. You say, well, why? Well, I'll tell you why. They refused to believe that God could do exceedingly abundantly above all that would ask of him according to the power that worked in them. They didn't believe God's promise. Amen. Only Moses, right? Moses and Joshua and Caleb, they were willing to claim the promise of God by faith. And so in Joshua 4, which is the chapter before, ahead of us, under the leadership of Joshua, a new generation followed a procession of priests. I wish I could have been there, something else to see. They were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And by the way, into the Jordan River. The Jordan River at that time was swollen. And it's interesting, if you read there in chapter 4, don't do now, but as they walked, God waited till they waded into the water before he began to part it. You know, because it was an act of faith. But they did. They did. And then the people followed. And God miraculously parted the waters of the Jordan and delivered them safely into chapter 5 on the west bank of the promised land. You got that? And behind them were 2 stacks of 12 stones of remembrance. There were 12 left in the river that were stacked up because they did while the water was abated, just because they could. No, God told them to. So that's kind of cool. You know, we've had a drought not long ago. There's parts of Lebanon that you could have done it. Yeah. Just stacked up, you know, whatever. And then here they come the waters again. Well, that's what happened. 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, and then 12 on the shore. Well, why was that? So they would not forget that one yielded individual like Joshua and one yielded nation like Israel, plus God, is the majority. Now, Joshua 5:1, we read, informs us that the news of chapter 4, the news of Israel's crossing of the Jordan River, preceded them. I mean, word of the miracle, the parting of the Jordan, traveled. And we made that clear. All the way to the sea, or that would be the Mediterranean Sea. The inhabitants of Canaan were terrified of what they heard. The God who created the heavens and the earth was literally going before his favorite nation, Israel, his coveted nation. And so this was the same God, you've got to understand, who parted the waters of the Red Sea and drowned the armies of Pharaoh. Well, that wasn't a real miracle because there wasn't a lot of water. Well, that's even more of a miracle because God drowned a whole army of Pharaoh in just a little bit of water. So that really makes it a miracle. Are y'all? And then, so they got breaking news. You know, it's amazing. We got breaking news. Well, in Canaan, the breaking news struck fear into the minds and the hearts of the inhabitants. And as Israel, and here we are in chapter 5, wake up, chapter 5, you're stepping onto the west bank of the Jordan River, okay? And as they did that, it was in the shadow of this great city of Jericho. And God was already, now think about this. If you need to operate in the will of God, if you operate in the will of God, you know that God is with you. Amen. And so if you're operating in the will of God, here's the dynamic as we see. God goes before you, preparing the way. Amen. And God is going before them in the conquest of Canaan. And already we're learning that the walk of God is a walk of faith. And it means that, I'm sorry to inform you this, it's not about you. Amen. The Christian life is not about you. The Christian life is not up to you, other than making a commitment to go with God. Now, the Christian life is a life of submission. It's a life of obedience. That doesn't sell well in America. It's a life of commitment and dependency upon God. And as you move forward into the next chapter of your life, you can know that God is going before you, leading the way. Someone said, and I love this, the secret of life is to find out which way God is going and go that way. Yeah. Amen. So, well, how do I know that? Well, I tell you what, it's not about rolling dice or signs and wonders. It's about getting your nose in the Bible. Amen. The Bible is God's mind. And, Paul says in Ephesians, don't be ignorant concerning the will of God. You should know it. And so if it's consistent with the principles and precepts and the testimony of Jesus Christ, well, then you can go. Go with God. And as you go, illustrated here in chapter 5 and 6 and 4 of Joshua, Romans 8:31 says, what shall we say then to all these things? If God before us, what? Who can be against us? Go with God, and He'll go with you. I mean, standing on the west bank of the Jordan River, God speaks to Joshua, and He gives instructions for the people to prepare themselves spiritually before the battle begins. And the key to victory and success in this life is inside of us, not outside of us. As Christians, we're often defeated and we're often discouraged because before we begin, we think that we're not good enough. Well, I'm not big enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough to be successful. And we look on the outside, and that's America. That's just where we are. We always look on the outside instead of the inside. We're building our kids outside in, and they never get around to the inside. Develop their strength, develop their speed. Okay. Well, what about the inside? Well, when they meet with any success, they can't handle it because they're empty.
Amen.
They're not strong enough. So look, instead of looking, God sees the inside, doesn't He?
Amen.
And that's what matters to God. God sees our hearts. And by the way, that's where He does His work.
Amen.
And then we're going to see Him do His work. Right here in chapter 5. So, okay, we're across the Jordan River. We're on the west bank. We're looking at Jericho. Go! Well, not yet. Not yet. Interesting. In verses 2 through 8 of Joshua 5, God commands His leader Joshua to circumcise this new generation of Israelites that were born in the wilderness. You got to understand, 40 years, a whole generation died. Now, crossing the Jordan was their children. Are y'all with me? I just want to say, I can't assume anybody knows everything. People don't read their Bibles, even Christians don't. So this is a new generation. And now let me tell you about that 40 years. Are y'all with me? 40 years. Well, there were a lot of funerals in the wilderness. Come on. There were a lot of funerals. Oh, and by the way, there were a lot of babies born in the wilderness those 40 years. Who's crossing the river? Okay? A lot of babies. But you know what there wasn't? Now listen, this is so important. Are y'all with me? Yeah. There were deaths and there were births. But there were no circumcisions. There were no circumcisions. You've got to understand. Well, why? Well, it doesn't say, but perhaps the older generation had given up their hope of ever entering Canaan. And things like circumcision were no longer important to them. That didn't matter. They had no faith. They had no vision of a new generation of Israelites to claim God's promise. Let me tell you something. I'm 64. Okay. Most of the blanks in my life have been filled in. Okay? You're going to marry. You're going to have, all that. You're going to go here. Some of them maybe could fill in better, but they're filled in. I still have some blanks yet to fill in. And I find myself looking at Preston. I let my friends say, I find myself looking and praying for a new generation. You understand? That can go further than I went, can do better than I ever did. And so I'm still preaching. I'm still ministering for your kids and my kids and our kids. Come on. For a new generation. And they lost that. They lost that. It's what's happened in America. A whole generation went to church, but they didn't take seriously their faith.
Amen.
There's no vision for a new generation. Well, I tell you what, the circumcisions might not have mattered to them, but it mattered to God. And all the males who were born in the wilderness would to receive in their flesh this outward sign of the covenant. Notice, let's skip down, verses 7 and 8 of Joshua 5. And their children, whom He, the Lord, raised up in their stead, Them Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised, because they had not circumcised them by the way. And it came to pass that when they had done the circumcising, all the people that they abode in places of the camp until there were whole. So the circumcision of Israel's males is a bloody, painful sight to behold. But I tell you what, to God it was beautiful. To God it was beautiful. I mean, more than connecting Jewish individuals to the external blessings of the covenant, circumcision also had a very, very strong spiritual overtone. Had a strong spiritual meaning. For example, in the last book of the Torah, Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 16, he says, "Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked." You see, circumcision was always a powerful act of consecration to God. In it, an Israelite says, well, I'm not like other nations. I listen to God and do what He tells me that says I should do. And so in the reality, these younger men were saying here in Joshua 5, I'm not like my grandfather. Come on.
Amen.
I'm not like my dad. I'm going to live my life differently than my grandfather. And I'm going to live my life differently than my dad. I'm going to consecrate my life to God. And I'm going to mean it.
Amen.
I'm not going to just check a box. I'm not going to just do the church thing. I'm going to take my faith seriously. I'm going to consecrate my life to God. And I'm going to take my faith seriously. Physical circumcision was stepping out in faithful obedience and identifying yourself as one of the Lord's people. Circumcision symbolized renouncing the flesh and the world. Circumcision represented dying to self and living to God. And how strange it would be to hear someone say, well, I'm not a Christian, but I don't attend church. I don't do church. Well, I'm a Christian church and preaching's boring. Well, I'm a Christian, but I refuse to be baptized. I'm a Christian, but I don't read my Bible. I don't see any of it. I'm a follower of Christ, but really, my life's all about me. I just want you to know there is a flow between the circumcision of the Old Testament and the baptism of the New Testament. And the New Testament speaks of baptism as the Christian circumcision, actually, in Colossians 2:11. Notice what it says, in whom we are circumcised with the circumcision made without hands, in putting off the body the sins of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. Buried with Him in what? Baptism, when you are risen with Him through faith in the operation of God who hath raised Him from the dead. So Abraham was not saved by circumcision. He was already saved by faith alone. And yet, he was commanded to take the sign of the covenant. And in the same way, baptism does not save us, yet it does picture our identity with Jesus Christ and our identity with His church, as well as the death, right? The death to the old life and resurrection to a new life in Jesus Christ. You see? I mean, read Romans 6, not now, but it's there. Baptism pictures the gospel that saves. Are you with me? It's talking about, I'm buried with Him, my old, and a new person is risen instead. A new man, a new life. You see, a new beginning. That's what I want you to see. Verse 9. Joshua 5:9. And the Lord, Yahweh, said unto Joshua, this day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Wherefore the name of the place is called Gilgal unto this day. So we can see it here. Here's the map. The first camp of the Israelites after they crossed the Jordan River into the Holy Land was Gilgal. And this camp served as a base of operations during the initial conquest of the Holy Land under Joshua. And it was here at Gilgal where God made the mark, His mark, on a new generation of people. It was right here at Gilgal where a new generation began a new chapter, okay? A better chapter in the history of Israel, God's people. And the previous testimony of faithlessness, the previous And unbelief was rolled away. Okay? Remember the kids and the rolled away, right? Every burden of my heart rolled away. Working for the airlines. That's right. This way, this way. Today, you might not hear and have testimonies of your generation of the Israelites. You could say today, well, I wasn't raised in church. But I'm going to live my life there.
Amen.
You understand? I wasn't raised reading my Bible. It wasn't important. You bought a Bible and then you forgot, where is it? I never knew where it was. It was only important. It seemed like I had it with me when I was in church. But I tell you what, for me in my house, I'm going to read my Bible. Come on.
Amen.
I wasn't raised. I can't do anything about my past, but I can do something about my future. And with God's help, I'm going to roll the reproach. I'm going to roll it away of a previous generation. You could be the beginning of a new generation. We weren't, they weren't churchgoers. We weren't Bible readers. We weren't taking ourselves seriously in my past, my grandfather, my dad, whatever. But I want you to know, starting here now, I am living my life for Jesus Christ. Verse 10. And the children of Israel encamped at Gilgal, kept the Passover. Oh, wow. On the 14th of the month, even of the place. So here we go. The festival year. Month of Abib, on the 14th day, we're studying the Feast of Israel, Leviticus chapter 23 on Wednesday night. And guess what? They hadn't circumcised those 40 years, and obviously they hadn't celebrated Passover. The original Passover celebration in Egypt under Moses, his leadership. The Lord made it clear. Notice Exodus 12:14. And this day, Moses says, God said to Moses, shall be unto you a memorial. You shall keep it a feast unto the Lord. How long? Talk to me. Throughout your what? Generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So as Joshua and Israel face another humanly impossible task. I mean, for Moses, it was this whole thing of the death of the firstborn and the Red Sea. For Joshua, they crossed the Jordan, but he's looking right at Jericho. And as they face this humanly impossible task, the Passover feast served to remind them of God's faithfulness and great power to deliver them. And the same God who parted the waters of the Red Sea had parted the waters of the Jordan River. And as a people and as a nation, they were to remember the great work of God's deliverance. And they were to always remember the one who is able, exceeding abundantly above all, to do all that, above all they ask or think, according to the power that worked in him. My generation before me, my granddad and my dad, they didn't have faith. But I want faith, and I'm going to live by faith. And I'm going to believe that God can change my life and give me victory. And the people said, Passover celebration on the west bank of the Jordan River was an empowering experience. Okay? Why are we here today? To check a box? We are here to remember what God has done. Come on. And God is still doing it.
Amen.
We're here this morning to remember that to be encouraged and strengthened to go fight the battles out there tomorrow. Come on.
Yes.
Passover, circumcision, consecration, shed blood, picturing Christ. Joshua 5, 11 and 12. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes, parched corn the seventh day, and the manna, what? That probably to some of them, that was good news. I'm tired of manna casserole, okay? Chicken fried manna. Here in Texas, we would fry it. Oh, yeah. You see, from the morrow, they had eaten of the old corn of the land, neither the children of Israel manna anymore, but they did eat of the what? The fruit of the land of Canaan that year. So for 40 years, the Lord had faithfully provided everything necessary for his people to survive in the wilderness. Every day the manna fell. Every day the water flowed to this nation. Proved that God... Can God spread a table in the wilderness?
Amen.
He did. But now, they've left the wilderness. They've entered Canaan. And how is Canaan referred to? As a land?
Flowing.
Now, I would really got about peanut butter and honey. I would really got excited. Milk and honey. Peanut butter and honey. Well, what is he saying is, it's a fruitful, productive land, and God will provide, continue to provide for you. In a different way. Okay? Now, the city of Gilgal, it became a beachhead for the camp of Israel in their conquest to Canaan. Joshua and the armies of Israel would return to Gilgal after each battle and remember God's covenant, celebrate God's faithfulness, worship God, reconnect with God, finding strength to continue with his help. And I just want you to know, and I got to go on, but the Lord's church is the New Testament Gilgal. I mean, this is the place where we assemble to rehearse God's goodness and grace in our lives, to remember God's promises, to renew our commitment to obey his voice. And the New Testament faith, you must understand, read your New Testament. It is a corporate faith. There's no such thing as a solo Christian in life. The Lord Jesus established his church as a beachhead in this sinful world, a place where we can assemble as a body of Christ and be edified and encouraged. And so it's here in Joshua 5 that we're tempted to shout, "Go, man! Let the conquest begin." We've been all, we're in the locker room, we all worked up, and we're ready to break, to go out to the fog machine. Not yet. Not quite yet. There's still something else. The next scene we have in Joshua 5 places us is before Joshua himself. We see Joshua. He is the appointed leader. He's the commander of Israel. And notice in verse 13. And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho. Okay? Joshua isn't standing in the camp of Gilgal. He is doing by the way, if you're a leader, you're always out front.
Amen.
If you're a leader, you're always out front. I don't care if you're a mom, you're a dad, I don't care what kind of leader you are. If you're really leading, you're out front. You're ahead of your people. And as God's appointed leader, he is out front. He is not in Gilgal. He's in the shadow of Jericho. Joshua 5:13. And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho. You see, here we are. The campaign. It's the eve of the campaign into Canaan. And Joshua, what is he doing? He's surveying the city with the fortification. He's strategizing how he could order the attack. Jericho was probably the most fortified city in Canaan. He had little or no experience in cities like this. And we can be sure that Joshua's army didn't have the battering rams or the catapults or the scaling ladders. They didn't have the great moving towers. No, Joshua was forced to conquer this great city with things like slings and arrows and spears and swords, which was, at that time, seemingly grossly inadequate. I mean, how would he prepare his army, and how would he go about taking this city? And it was then Joshua saw something that startled him. Verse 13 continues. That he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And it was enough. I mean, if you're Joshua, this would raise the hair on the back of your neck. I mean, a soldier with a drawn sword meant possible engagement. And Joshua began to assess the situation. Was this a friend? Was this a foe? Verse 13. And Joshua went to him and says unto him, Art thou for us? Or art thou for our adversaries? And in Joshua's mind, really there's only two choices. Either this man was for Israel, or he was considered an enemy of Israel. Either this unidentified soldier in front of him was ready to help destroy Jericho, or he was there to defend it. Man, the testosterone is flowing. You understand? Verse 14. And you know how he answered? Nope. Which side are you on? Our side or their side? Nope. Nope. Nada. To begin with, that's not the answer he was prepared to hear. This mystery captain was saying, I'm not for you. I'm not for your enemy. But you are under my orders. And you had best be for me. And there are so many people claiming that God is on their side, as if they have him on a leash to do their bidding. I'm sorry, this is off the page, but I'm probably going to make this message too long. What do you know about that? I'm sorry. No. No, you said 2.5 hours at a movie, you can do this. If you want to. Everybody sign off on that? Well, God showed up to Job, and he says, oh, I'll tell you what, why don't you go tame a crocodile? And go get a crocodile and let your children play with it. Are you with me? This is in there. Maybe it's a Leviathan, hippo. I don't know what it was. But why don't you take him up? And he says, isn't that absurd? Yeah. Dad brought home a pet alligator. Brian, there's some bass. Hey, I got an alligator, kids. Let's play. You know what Josh said? You know, Josh said, Joe, if you can't tame him, how do you expect to tame me? Are y'all with me?
Yes.
Oh, God's a Republican. God's a Democrat. God is a Libertarian. God is a Baptist. He's Episcopalian. He's Anglican. He's Presbyterian. No, God's Catholic. I mean, every political party or religious group claims God for themselves, right? They want to put him in the box of their cause and their concern. He says, no. Are you for us again? No. He says, but as captain of the host of Yahweh am I come. That Hebrew word there, sar, translated captain, often appears in the Old Testament. And I'm told that the only place in the Bible where that phrase captain, singular of the host, appears as opposed to captains, plural, is right here. And so this man is identifying himself as, all caps, the captain, the one and only captain of the host of Yahweh. And so this mystery man also uses the first person. He says, now, and am I now come? Which really understates the importance of this phrase. Joshua would have understood the phrase host of the Lord as the armies of Israel, for sure. But as captain of the host of the Lord, this man commanded the forces of heaven and earth, as well as the ranks of heavenly beings. And so this mystery captain, with his drawn sword, is clearly saying to Joshua, now look at this, I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to take over. I'm here to take charge. Now what is it in front of you that you need to give to God? Yes. Oh, I would have a new beginning, but I've got this problem. I would claim it, but. Well, how big is God? Yes. Joshua 14 continues, and Joshua fell on his face to the earth. And then what? Talk to me. I mean, Joshua quickly got the picture.
his response was to assume the posture of worship and surrender. And just like us, Joshua, no doubt, and I get there so often, we're thinking in terms of my responsibility. It's his responsibility. It's his war, his army, his resources, his strategy. And dads can do that. What am I going to do? And my budget and my job. And it's like it, and you can feel the weight. And then you felt it. The weight coming upon your shoulders. But in a moment of time, Joshua realized that he was in the presence of the divine commander. And having just celebrated Passover, perhaps he remembered the day. And do you remember that day when Moses stood on the banks of the Jordan River, the Red Sea, that they were to cross? And you know what God said? Exodus 14:13. Look at this. And Moses said to the people, "Fear ye not," what? Stand still and what? See the salvation of the Lord, which He will show to you today. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, just say bye-bye. You're not going to see them again.
Yes.
Oh, God is for me. Oh, Dad, it's not all up to me.
Amen.
Oh, Dad, it's okay. Just take the kids. I have no idea, but I trust God. How's this going to happen, Dad? I don't know, but we're trusting God for this.
Amen.
Verse 14 concludes, "And said unto him, What saith my Lord unto his servant?" So Joshua is understanding that he has helped beyond all he could ever ask or imagine. Rather than give orders, what is he doing now? He's taking orders. And this is where and how the Christian life is to be lived. It is to be lived at the feet of Jesus Christ, the captain of our salvation, receiving orders. And every day as Christians, we're to present ourselves to Jesus, seeking His will and strength for our lives. I love the way David Crowder's song says it. Every move I make, I'm making you. You make me move, Jesus. I mean, you make me move. Every breath I breathe in you. Every step I take in you. You see?
Yes.
Yeah. It's in you. Verse 15. And the captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, "Loose thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place where thou standest is holy." And Joshua did just that. Joshua removing his sandals is a sign of servanthood. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of surrender. And the idea of holy ground here clearly states that this captain is identifying himself as the one who spoke to Moses from the burning bush in Exodus 3:5. And that voice from that bush that burned but was never consumed said, "Who are you?" "I am." That's who I am. I am the self-existent one. I am the God who needs nothing outside of Him. I am the one who supplies everything. I am the one who never runs dry, who never runs out. This was a theophany. It was a pre-incarnate appearance of the Son of God, Jesus Christ. So basically what we have here is Yeshua talking, facing Yeshua.
Yeah.
Jesus meets Jesus. Joshua meets Joshua. Have you come face to face with Christ?
Thank you, Lord.
Have you come face to face with Him lately? The word's captain of the Lord's host. Think about the power of Christ. Think of what that means that He is living in you. Come on. By the dynamic of His Spirit. I mean, tonight we're going to talk about the fruit of the Spirit and what God can do in our lives and the fruit of His life manifest to us. This was a theophany. This statement doubtless led Joshua to realize that just like Moses, he was standing in the presence of God. Now, the words captain to Joshua continue in verse 6. Chapter 6. No, verse 1. Chapter 6, verse 1. Now Jericho was straightly shut up because the children of Israel, none went out, none came in. The city of Jericho was on lockdown. It was on full alert. It was in full defense. And from the human perspective, it would be entirely and extremely difficult, if not impossible, to penetrate this city. There's no surprise attack here. Verse 2, and the Lord said unto Joshua, see, I have given unto thine hand Jericho, the king thereof, the mighty men of valor. See, from God's perspective, I don't know if you love this. It's already done. You got that? He just tells Joshua, you know the city, you know all the king, you know the mighty men, you know, hey, it's toast. They're toast. Stand still, and see the power of the Lord. And all these Egyptians in his army, last time you're going to see them. That's what he's telling Joshua. Oh, hey, look, don't freak out. Just trust me. It's already done. And then it really gets interesting if you're a commander, because we're landing the plane right here. Verses 3 through 5 of Joshua 6. It says, you shall compass the city. Here's the battle plan. This is good. All right? You shall compass the city, all the men of war, and go around the city once. And do that for 6 days. Okay? Do what? Listen, march around the city.
Yeah.
Just march around the city? Yeah. Is that all? Yeah. 6 days? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Verse 4. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day, you shall come the 7th day. I want you to do it 7 times. And the priest shall blow with the ram's horns, with the trumpets, the shofars. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, that you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, and all the people shall shout with great shout. And then, what?
All the city shall fall back.
What's going to come down? Okay. I guess. I mean, the practice of naming military operation is believed to have begun in World War I. And Germany branded many of their missions with religious and mythological titles. During World War II, Prime Minister Winston Churchill urged the military leaders to come up with valiant names for battles so that no mother of a fallen soldier need say that her son was killed in an operation called Bunny Hug or Valley Food. So this military operation against Jericho would have been Operation Ram's Horn. And for sure, Joshua had never heard of or witnessed or imagined an offensive like this. It made no sense, militarily speaking. And yet, isn't that the point? Yeah. Hebrews 11:30 says, by faith the walls of Jericho fell down.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
By faith. Operation Ram's Horn required total dependence upon God. Total dependence. It required great faith.
Amen.
Don't you think? To receive it, it took faith to sell it to his troops.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking at Joshua and saying, what? And it took faith to enact it. But it worked just like God said.
Yes.
And praise God for this new generation that was ready to write a new chapter in their lives with God's help. God is always looking, now listen to me, for a new generation of empowered believers. And right now, God is speaking to your heart. He's speaking to you about your life. He's talking to you about your family and your commitment to serve the Lord. He's talking about your past.
Yes.
He's talking about what's behind you. Maybe your parents or grandparents. Will you surrender to His plan for your life?
And it begins when you recognize your own weakness. It recognizes. It begins when you recognize that the only way, the best way to live your life is to daily. You know, He's called the bread of life. Come on, talk to me. He's called. And you ingest His Word every day. Come on.
Amen.
He's the water of life.
Yes.
Every day. And how often do you eat? Several times a day? How often do you drink? How necessary is that? How necessary it is for to daily allow ourselves and ingest God's presence. See His face. And say, I got this problem today. I don't know how it's going to happen. I got this problem in my life. I can't change people, but God, I believe you can.
Yes.
I can't change your heart, but God, I believe you can. I can't reconcile this relationship, God. It's about to kill me. But God, I believe you can open people's ears and their eyes and their heart. I believe. Lord, I confess my past of unbelief. But honestly, that today, I want to have the testimony of faith. Let's bow our heads. I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know, it may be a marriage situation. It may be a personal situation. It may be some addiction you have in your life. It may be just all kinds of situations. Maybe you've just made some mistakes. Maybe you're one of those ruts in your heart that's not good. Ruts in your mind, that's not good. And it's a rut of unbelief. It's a rut of rebellion, maybe. And you know, it's a rut minus God. So what about you? What is it that you need to give to Him? What is the step? Is it first to believe? Is it first to believe? Have you believed? Have you come to see Jesus Christ glorified? The Son of God died for your sins, rose again. He is Messiah. He is Lord. And right now you need to come and confess. Oh, I have believed, but I need to make it known. Maybe you believe that you've never been baptized. Well, Jesus said, you know, Jesus Himself was baptized. He established, He gave the authority to this church to baptize believers. It's like circumcision. You know, maybe it's a commitment to the church. And we've understated all about a generation, 40 years, that just neglected. It just wasn't important. And maybe that's the testimony of your life. Maybe that's the testimony of your past. It just wasn't important. Maybe you're a head of your home. You're a father, and you've been lax in all of these areas. You're not the leader that you should be. Leader in word, leader in worship. I'm just telling you that all of us today can have a wonderful new beginning. So, Father, we commit this time to you. There's nothing more important than saying yes right now. And so, God, may we have a heart of faith to believe and say, yes, I need a new beginning. Lord, I'm asking you to tear down the walls of pride, to bring down the walls of resentment, anger, maybe anger at somebody, something others done or have not done. Lord, and we help to get them eyes. You know, there's no life in anger. And Lord, we just say, Lord, with Christ, I just need Christ front and center. In Jesus' name. Amen. As we stand and as